So we are assuming that you've got some familiarity with Pear Deck already. Hopefully it's something that you've used with your students and are a little bit familiar with, because we're going to dive in and get into some of the advanced features and advanced uses of Pear Deck. I want to share some of your artwork here. So I've got some drawings that people have created on my presentation view. So this Pear Deck is already in progress. It is in synchronous instruction or instructor-paced mode. So as the instructor, I am guiding us through this lesson today. So on this page, I do have the ability right down at the bottom on my bottom toolbar to click on Show Responses. And I'm going to be able to see my student responses to this prompt. So this is showing all of your responses anonymously. So we are not seeing any names attached to these responses, but I can share all of your beautiful drawings here. Now, I am looking at one response at a time. Love this elephant here, one response at a time. But in the top left-hand corner, we've got a few layout options. So the first one, the list layout, is this larger view. Great for seeing the detail of some of these drawings. I can also move to the grid layout. This is going to let me see multiple drawings on the same page at the same time. Yeah, this one did kind of lend itself to an elephant, but we've got some people thinking creatively. We've got a tree over here. We've got a dog, and I like this striped elephant here. I think that's an elephant as well. So we've got some really creative drawings here. And again, these are all anonymous. However, you do have something we call our teacher dashboard, and that is going to allow you to see your student responses with their names attached. That teacher dashboard, a great feature here in Pear Deck, and we're going to get into that teacher dashboard here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and head back over to our presentation, and we're going to move on to our next slide. Thank you so much, by the way, for those of you that participated in that drawing slide. All right, let me introduce myself. My name is Mary Ellen. I'm one of the product trainers for Pear Deck. I started out my career as a classroom teacher. I taught in elementary and middle school. I also was a librarian. As a librarian, I worked with pre-K all the way up to seniors in high school. And I also served as a technology specialist, managing hardware, deploying software, providing support and training on all of those resources to my staff, to students, and sometimes to parents as well. I'm really happy to be here with all of you today, and this is our plan for our session. We're going to spend some time learning about some of the advanced features of Pear Deck. I'm going to walk you through how to use the shared teacher dashboard, lock screen timer, immersive reader, new prompt, lots of great features here. We're also going to explore some of those artifacts of learning that you can provide to your students after the session is over. That includes our takeaways and our reflect and review. We'll also walk through where you can find your session data after the session is over, as well as some of your settings options. Now, throughout this presentation, please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Go ahead and use that Q&A. I will keep an eye on that as we're going along, and I'll stop and check in periodically to see if any questions have arisen. We'll also be sharing some other support resources that are available to you from Pear Deck. So the first thing I would like to do is gather some information from all of you, and I would love to know something you already know about Pear Deck, as well as something you may be wondering about Pear Deck. So this is a great way to start a lesson with your students. We all know that it's really good to access that prior knowledge to find out what your students already know about a topic, and then spark some curiosity, things they might want to discover or learn. So I am going to give you just a couple of minutes to figure out what you want to add to this. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and open up Pear Deck as a student in my interface right here. So I'm going to just open a new tab, paste in that join code. Oops, I got too much information here. And join as a student myself. So the first thing it's going to do is ask me, how are you feeling today? So I've got that little quick SEL check-in as a student. I'm doing pretty good today. So I am going to choose that one. And then this is what things are going to look like as a student. So if you haven't joined as a student yet, you still can. That join code is up in the top right-hand corner. But we do want to make sure that our students know how to interact with Pear Deck. So I love that Pear Deck allows me to join my own presentation as a student at the same time that I am initiating or running this presentation as a teacher. And this way I can demonstrate to my students how to use the different tools that are provided. So this one is a drawing slide. We've got our colors right down here. You can choose whatever color you want to use. We have some different tools. We've got a pencil, a highlighter. There's a line tool, really nice for precision here. We can grab a text box and type in what we want to know. And then we have eraser. So if we need to erase any of our work, we can grab that eraser tool. So nice options for your students there. And it looks like people have responded there, and we've got a question coming in. Don't know if I got credit from the last week. So good news, I did send a spreadsheet from that session last week to your administrators. So if you joined, then your name is on that spreadsheet. If you joined the webinar, so whether or not you joined the Pear Deck presentation, if you joined the webinar, I sent that spreadsheet to your administrators so they can give you credit for attending. And I will do the same thing today. This is a webinar format for the specific purpose of being able to generate that report of people that joined the webinar so that I can send that to your administrator so they can give you credit for attending the session. So just wanted to answer Cynthia's question there to make sure everybody knows you are going to be getting credit for this session. So again, thank you for joining, and hopefully this will be useful and you will learn something that you didn't know before. Missed a little bit. Okay, cool. Sounds good. So thank you so much for coming back, Cynthia. All right, so I have, well, kind of answered as a student, but I'm going to go back over to my teacher interface, and we're going to head back down here to show responses. All right, so let's look. Oh, love these drawings. Yes, play with those drawing tools. Now, I mentioned I was a teacher in both elementary and middle school. And if you've ever taught middle school, they can be a little, they can take advantage of situations. Let's put it that way. So if I were teaching a middle school students, I might not leave this question open as I display those answers, because you might notice you still have access to your tools to be able to continue answering or modifying your answer as I'm displaying those answers to the class. So teachers do have the ability to lock down those answers, and I'm going to show you that here in just a minute, but let's go ahead and go to the list layout and see what some of these responses are. So again, on this presentation view, everything is anonymous. Love that you brought this up. Can you co-teach? Yes, you can. The students seem to be engaged. That's what we found. Students really tend to like Pear Deck. It opens up those lines of communication between the student and their teacher. So even your shy students don't have to raise their hand and speak out or ask a question in front of the class. Sometimes students are a little reserved. They don't want to share their ideas, share their thoughts out, just in case their opinion is not popular for the rest of the class or something that other students don't think is a good or appropriate response. So I love that Pear Deck ensures that every student's voice is heard. It's also a way for you as a teacher to make sure you're hearing from every student. So we can see those answers coming in. Love it. Love to see this. Can we implement Pear Deck naturally into the arts classroom? Absolutely. So Pear Deck is something you can use in any content area with any grade level. Because you are using a slide deck that you have created, you're going to be able to add any content to that slide deck that you want to and be able to share that out as a Pear Deck presentation. So it works with any subject area. No familiarity with Pear Deck? All right, well, we are getting into it. You are getting that experience as a student, as a participant right now, and you figured it out. You were able to answer that question. This is great. How does it differ from Nearpod? Completely great question. They are different products. We're just going to talk about Pear Deck today. And if you want to do a little research on what Nearpod can do, then you can explore that as well. Yes, definitely can do this as a synchronous or asynchronous activity. Student-paced lessons, how to assign and the pacing expectations. So we're going to talk about that as well. So love to see all of these. Can students collaborate? Well, here's the deal. In Pear Deck, you can use this shared screen to display responses in front of the class, leading to class discussions. You can have students pair up and respond to Pear Deck on the same device so they can collaborate in person on one device with their responses on a Pear Deck presentation. You also can use something called Flashcard Factory. Flashcard Factory is a game in Pear Deck that you can use to build vocabulary, and that is a really collaborative game that you can play. And if you joined our Pear Deck presentation, which you did because you responded here, you're going to get some information on Flashcard Factory in your takeaway document. All right. Thank you so much for all of these responses. I'm just looking through some of your wonderings here, and I want to make sure that we get all of these addressed as we go through our session. So I am going to go ahead and hide those responses. We're going to move on, but please feel free to use that Q&A to ask your questions. All right, I see somebody saying, I am not familiar with Pear Deck. This is a 201 training, so it is assuming some familiarity with Pear Deck. So I do want to share a resource with you. Let me go right here. I'm going to put this in the chat. This is a link to our live webinar trainings. So we've got several products that we represent here. Pear Deck is one of them. And there is a Pear Deck 101 training. We offer it every Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. That's right in the middle of your school day. So if you cannot attend that live session at noon, then you can go ahead and register for it. And the next day, you're going to get an email that has a recording of that training session, and you can watch that at your own leisure. So if you need more information about how to get started using Pear Deck, then you will be able to use this Pear Deck 101 webinar, and that's going to help you get started. However, we are going to go through some things that are going to help you as you are getting started using Pear Deck in this training today as well. All right. So while that being said, we've got a slide up here right now that has some information about things that you can do with Pear Deck. This is another drawing slide, so please feel free to highlight the things that you already know how to do in Pear Deck, things that you have already tried out, and that's going to give me an idea of the things that we need to cover in this training today. So with Pear Deck, of course, you can create interactive slides. You are interacting with slides right now. The cool thing about Pear Deck, as I mentioned before, you take a slide deck that you've created for a lesson, and you add the Pear Deck interactivity onto the slides in that slide deck. You can add Pear Deck interactivity to one slide, multiple slides, or every slide in your slide deck, whatever you need, whenever you want to get feedback or information from students. Somebody asked this or wondered this earlier, can you add a co-teacher? You absolutely can. So I will show you how to do that. We also have data that we can review. So we looked at this just a little bit. I showed you this show responses button right down here, but we also have a teacher dashboard that we're going to get into a little bit more here in just a minute. We have student takeaways. I mentioned this before. This slide deck is going to be provided to you if you joined the session as a document. It will contain all the slides from the slide deck. Anything that's hyperlinked in the slide deck will also be on that document. And then any of your responses. So throughout this presentation, if there is a slide that asks you to respond, you're going to see your responses on your takeaway document. You also have the option to generate responses on a spreadsheet, and reflect and review is another option for looking at student responses on Pear Deck. You can embed videos or websites into your slide presentation. Really nice option, so students don't have to leave your presentation to open a new tab or window to view those resources. You can add audio to slides, a great way to give your students some instructions or supplemental materials. There is a timer option and immersive reader, great for accommodations for students. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on show responses. So I ask you to highlight the things that you're comfortable with, the things you've tried out before. So I can scroll through and see all of those responses. I can go to that grid layout to look at your responses. And there's one more option here, the overlay. Overlay is going to sandwich everyone's responses on top of one another, so I can see those common answers. And it looks like right here in the middle, this is something that we need more information on, as well as I don't see that blue on the teacher dashboard. So kind of gives me an idea of the things that you might be interested to learn about in our presentation today. So thank you so much for giving me that feedback. And we are going to talk about all of these topics right in here and some of these down at the bottom as well. So again, I'm going to hide those responses, and I'm going to use my controls here at the bottom left corner to move on to the next slide in our presentation. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is the shared teacher dashboard. So somebody asked, is it collaborative? Can we have co-teachers? You can have co-teachers. The teacher dashboard enables teachers to share their session controls and that insight, how your students are doing, with other educators in your organization. So this could be a co-teacher, an inclusion or resource teacher, a counselor, any other teacher that needs access to be able to view student work and support students. I want to show you what this looks like. So I'm moving on to the next slide, and this one is a text response slide. So in order to demonstrate the teacher dashboard and show you how to set up that co-teacher, please just enter your favorite snack as a text response. So on your student side, when you see this type of question, the students are going to see the slide on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, there's a space for the students to provide their answer. Students can add more than one response. So if they had another thought, they can add something else here. Oops. And going back to my presentation view, when I'm ready, I can click on show responses and I can see my student responses. Again, it's anonymous on this presentation view. Let me bring our teacher dashboard back into view. So teacher dashboard is really a control panel for you as a teacher. You'll be able to see all of your student responses, and you'll be able to see which students provide each of those responses. You'll also be able to provide that teacher dashboard to your co-teachers. To open your teacher dashboard, you're going to head down to the control panel at the bottom of this presentation view, and you'll see a 3-dot menu. When you click on that, you're going to see a few options here. One option, open dashboard in a new window, is going to open up that teacher dashboard on the same device you're presenting from in its own window. That is going to allow you to project or present the presentation view separate from that teacher dashboard view. Now, if you have another device, maybe you have an extra tablet or Chromebook in your classroom, or you want to use your smartphone. So any device that has a browser and internet connectivity can be used to open that teacher dashboard. When you click on Open Dashboard in New Device, you will be provided with a URL, app.peardeck.com/dash. When you log in on that other device to this URL, you're going to connect to the account you're presenting from, and then you'll be able to see that teacher dashboard on that other device. Now, I've got my teacher dashboard open in another window, so I am going to just drag that back over to our screen right here so you can see the teacher dashboard as compared to the presentation view. Now, they both have that toolbar at the bottom to allow you to move students through the presentation. Let me get that back here. So they both have this control panel at the bottom. We can see on both of those how many students have joined, how many students have responded. We've got our slide deck over here on the left-hand side. I can pop that open to see all of those slides in my slide deck. And on my teacher dashboard view, I can see those slides here as well. If there are notes on your slide deck, you can access your notes here. And then on the right-hand side, we do have the ability to show and hide student responses. Now, on my presentation view, chocolate chip cookies is coming in anonymously. But on my teacher dashboard, I can see that that is Amy's response. So this is really nice as a teacher. It's so important to know which students are providing which response. Now, on this question, there is no right or wrong answer, but in our classes, we sometimes want to do a check for understanding, and we need to know if our students have got it, if they're with us, or if we need to back up, do some reteaching, and try it again. So I can see Amy's answer, Martha, Katie likes mixed nuts. Yes, Joshua, Krispy Kreme, great choice here. Oreos for Don, Twizzlers for David. There's my potato chips, pretzel. Oh, Cheez-It. Good call, Kelly. So as I'm going through and looking at my student responses, to the left of the student name, you're going to see a face. This is coming from that SEL check-in when you joined that session. So it gave you 3 options. How are you doing today? The green, we've got the red and the yellow. And if you don't answer the question, then you end up with this face without a mouth on it. Now, this is just one check-in you can do with your students to see if they are in a good space to be ready to learn. If I have a student that's coming in with that red frowny face, I might want to go over and check in with them and see if they're doing okay, see if there's any barriers to learning. So I can see all of your answers coming in here. To the right of your name, you're going to see 3 icons here. We've got a star, we've got a feedback button, and then a 3-dot menu. Now, the star is really cool. It's going to allow you to select the answers that you want to display to the class. So let me go ahead and get rid of that thumbnail image here. So you can see we've got lots of responses here on the screen. On my teacher dashboard view, I can star the answers that I want to display to the class. So as you're answering the question, I can go ahead and select the answers that I want to share. So only the starred answers will show up. If I remove a star, then that answer is no longer displayed, and I can display some other answers. This is really nice for leading those class discussions and showing students just a handful of answers at a time. If we go down to the bottom and clear stars, then all of the student answers are going to appear. Now, the comment bubble right down here, I'm going to be able to leave comments for my students. This is one-way communication from the teacher to the student. So the student would not be able to respond back to that, but they're going to be able to see that comment on their student interface. That comment is also going to be available on their takeaways and on Reflect and Review. The 3-dot menu here is going to allow you to hide student responses. So if a student has given an answer that you don't want to display to the class, maybe it's the only student that got the right answer, you want to keep it hidden until you've had a class discussion about what that right answer should be. Or it could be a student that shared some personal information and you don't want to display that to the class. So you do have the ability to hide that response. When you hide a response, it's going to be grayed out. The star option is gone. And then you can go to that 3-dot menu and choose show response if you no longer want to hide it. All right, in the top right-hand corner, you're going to see a class roster button. When you click on that, you're going to see all of the students that have joined your session. On the right-hand side, there's a 3-dot menu here. And if there's a student that joined your session that should not be in it, you're going to be able to block them from that session. Again, you have that integration to invite your Google Classroom to this presentation. And in the top left, there is a teacher roster. When you click on teachers, initially you are the only teacher that will be on this teacher roster. But in the top right-hand corner, you're going to see invite co-teacher. When you click on that, there's going to be a link. You can copy that link and share it with your co-teachers. They will click on the link and have access to the teacher dashboard. They can get access to it during a live session alongside you, or they can access that dashboard after the session is over. That link is going to be good for a week for them to access that class. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring this teacher dashboard back over to my other screen, and I want to look through at some of these questions that have come through. All right. To clarify, we can be in the student view on one device and the teacher dashboard in another device without any issues. That is correct. So in our instance right here, I am on my presentation view on this window. I'm also joined as a student here. And on the same device in another window, I'm on my teacher dashboard. So you can actually join as a student and as a teacher and on your teacher dashboard on the same device. You could also join on a separate device. So yes, you got that right. Yes, the presenter view could be on one device and the teacher dashboard view could be on another device. So if I put it on my phone, a tablet, or a Chromebook, that would allow me to move around the room and then guide my students through that presentation and select the responses that I want to share with the class. So yes, that is correct. All right. Let me know if you have any other questions, but that is our teacher dashboard view and the ability to share that teacher dashboard with a co-teacher. Okay, let's talk about this lock timer function. So I mentioned earlier, I was a middle school teacher and I would really hesitate to share my student responses if they had the ability to modify or add to their responses when they're being displayed for the class. Sometimes students like to be funny, they like to add things to it to distract my class. So I want to use this lock timer function to make sure they're not going to be able to change those answers. It's also a nice feature if you have provided a question to students and you don't want them to correct that answer just yet or change it just yet. So the countdown timer is going to allow you to do that. All right, let's say we started talking about heroes and we read Holes and we read The Lightning Thief. And now we want to look at some traits that both of those characters share. So I pulled this Making Connections from one of the templates that Pear Deck provides. And then I added the names of our characters. And I made this a drawing slide. Drawing slides allow you to draw, but you can also drop in that text box if you'd rather type. Now, down at the bottom, I've got my show responses. We've already looked at that a couple of times, but to the right of show responses, you're going to see a lock screens button. If you click on lock screens one time, student responses are going to be locked in. Students won't be able to alter or change those responses. I don't want to do that quite yet, but I do want to give my students a limited amount of time to make those decisions, to brainstorm and put their thoughts down. So I am going to click and hold on that lock, and you're going to see 3 timer options appear: 3 minutes, 1 minute, or 30 seconds. And you can choose an amount of time on the clock. And I'm just going to go ahead and choose 30 seconds just for demonstration purposes. You probably, in this case, would want to give your students a little more time than that, but you're going to see that timer appear on my presentation view, and we know exactly how much time is available for students to respond. Right up here at the top, I'm going to toggle back over to my student view, and here I am going to add some information. They are both heroes. They are both on a quest. And now that we've counted down to 0, we are locked into our responses. So that happened automatically. I see that my teacher has locked responses for the slide. I can see my responses, but I can't modify or change them right now. Going back to that teacher view, I see that my lock is red, letting me know that those student responses are locked in. I can unlock the students' screens by clicking on that button. But before we do that, I want to show those responses so we can have that class discussion. Now, we've looked at this before, but I want to bring that teacher dashboard view back on screen one more time and show you right down here at the bottom. I can see that 17 of my students were not able to respond. So after we have that discussion, I may want to unlock screens so that students are able to go ahead and write some of those thoughts down after we talked about it as a class. So now I can unlock the screens. Maybe I want to use that lock screen timer again to give my students a few seconds to be able to add to or modify their answer. And again, when it counts down to 0, student responses are going to be locked in. When you use that countdown timer, you can leave those screens locked and then move on to the next question or the next slide and prevent your students from modifying those answers. So use that however you need to. But I love that lock screen, and I love that it changes colors as it counts down. It's a really nice way to provide that wait time for your students. All right. So now that our students have done some brainstorming to compare those 2 characters, I've got a slide with a rubric on here, and I want my students to complete a 3-paragraph essay comparing those 2 characters. On my student side, I can see the slide on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, this is where I can enter my text. Now, when you have a text response slide for your students, the text is unlimited. So they will be able to type that whole 3-paragraph essay here into this box. And I don't want to pick on Amy, but Amy is responding to this question. And I love that I can see the response coming in real time. So this is like a virtual peek over your students' shoulders as they're working. You might have noticed the 3 dots, just like if you're waiting for a text message to come in and you see the 3 dots and you know that somebody is writing, they are thinking. You see those 3 dots? But I also don't have a submit button on the student side. So as a student, they don't have to think, okay, I'm finished, I'm done, I'm ready for my teacher to see my answer. There is no submit button. As soon as you begin typing, that information is going to come through on the teacher dashboard. So like I said, it's like a virtual peek over your students' shoulders. All right, I'm going to go back over here. Oh, well, let me show you this. I've got my essay right here. And let's say the students were typing it in a document. They can actually come over here and copy and paste that into the answer blank. Or the student can grab that link and they can drop that link in. So the really nice thing about that is, as a teacher on your teacher dashboard, that is going to be a hyperlink. So this is a really nice option to collect any presentations or any documents that your students created and they need to submit to you. So that is a hyperlink to that document. Oh yeah, love that idea. Great way to do timed writing. Yes, absolutely. Oh, David, you should read those books, but they're also both movies. Have to say the books were better, but good books to read for that hero element. All right, let's move on. And talk about our quick checks for understanding. So Pear Deck allows for pop-up activities and formative assessments within a lesson in progress. We've probably all had those situations when we are in the middle of teaching and we decided that we need to go down another path, or a student asks a question and it brings up a new topic. Or maybe you discover that your students need to back up and we need to do a little reteaching. Well, Pear Deck allows for that through our new prompt button. So in the bottom right corner, you're going to see a new prompt button right down here. And when you click on it, you're going to see the current content with some answer choice options. So with some interactivity built in. If I go back, I'm going to see some templates with some pretty broad questions or prompts that I can pop right into our lesson. So we've got lots of options here. So I might want to use this one right here. Pause and write what you've just learned. If I click on that, it is going to add a question into the slide deck in progress. As a student, I can see that pause and write what you've learned. And then on the right-hand side, I can jump in and share some of the things I learned. So really nice way to kind of extend on a new topic or back up and do some reteaching. So Pear Deck right down here in the bottom right corner has that new prompt button to let you drop in another question or prompt in an active lesson. Oh, I love that idea. If the lesson derails, you don't have to redo or restart the lesson, drop in a new prompt and take that turn and go with it. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Thank you so much for those responses. And this one is a drawing slide, just a little check-in. Use your drawing tool and circle where you would go to add a question to a slide deck or a lesson in progress. So you can find it on the presentation view. It's also going to be on your teacher dashboard view. Clicking on that is going to give you access to those general templates or to use the current slide with a new interactive question type. So I'm going to go ahead and show those responses in overlay view, and everybody's got it right down there in the lower right corner. Good job, everybody. Thanks. All right. Immersive Reader is a really nice tool built into Pear Deck, and it's available for students that need a little support when it comes to reading. So this is going to be great for students that are struggling or emerging readers, struggling with fluency, or English language learners. Immersive Reader is going to pull the text from the slide and give the students some tools to access that text. Let me show you how this works. I'm going to toggle back over to my student view. So if you've joined as a student, on your student view, look in the lower right-hand corner for the book and speaker icon. When you click on that book and speaker icon, it is going to pull the text off of the slide and place it in Immersive Reader. At the very bottom, you can click play.
Immersive Reader, a teacher-enabled functionality.
It will read that text aloud for the student. We also can speed up or slow down. That's the speed at which it is read. You can choose a female or male voice. And in the top right corner, we've got some other options here. So the first one, text preferences, will let the students resize that text and change the spacing. The students can choose from a few different fonts. And then we have colored overlays. The students that I worked with dyslexia really benefited from these colored overlays. And the students usually have their preferred color of overlay. In the center, you have the ability to break down the words by syllable, identify the parts of speech, and the students can even label the parts of speech. The book icon right up here is our reading preferences. Students can toggle on a line focus tool. There's a lot of text on this page, so this is going to let me read through it line by line. They can enable a picture dictionary. Students can click on a word and see a pictorial representation of that word, or even just have that one word read aloud. And then finally, most exciting to me is the ability to translate this text into over 80 different languages. Using that drop down, you're going to see all of our language choices. The student can choose the language they prefer, select it, and then they can toggle on document. That is going to translate all of the text on this slide into the language they've selected. And not only that, they can play it.
Lector inmersivo, una
And it's going
funcionalidad.
to read it aloud in the language they chose. Up at the top, we can go back to the original language from that slide or back to the language that we selected. So a great option to be able to accommodate for a number of different student needs. Once the student has accessed that information, in the top left-hand corner, they can click on that arrow and get right back into the slide presentation and go ahead and continue with that lesson. So I love that immersive reader option. Okay, going back to our presentation. It's important to know that immersive reader has got to be toggled on prior to starting your Pear Deck lesson for it to be available to your students. So in your sessions, you can head over to peardeck.com, which is just this page right here, and then log in as a teacher. So I am going to go right here. I've already got my Pear Deck homepage opened up. It's peardeck.com, so it's pretty easy to remember, but you can bookmark it if you want to. And you click on Teacher Login, and this is going to be your account homepage. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to see your email address, you'll see your avatar, and if you have a crown, that indicates you're a premium Pear Deck user. In the top left, we do have a list of sessions that we've conducted in Pear Deck. We have access to our content orchard. So this is where you can find some pre-made lessons that you can grab and customize and use with your students. This is also where you're going to find our help center. So support.goguardian.com/Pear Deck. So lots of great support articles covering everything we're talking about in our session today. But I want to go right here under my avatar and click on My Account. And this is where you're going to find your settings. So these are your options. You can toggle these on or off, but again, you've got to make your choices prior to starting your lesson for them to go into effect for your session. So we've got that classroom climate that you saw when you joined the Pear Deck lesson. Immersive reader we just talked about. Here is that Google Classroom integration. And require student logins. Toggling this on is how I am able to see all of your names. So again, they've got to be on prior to starting your lesson. All right. So where do students find that immersive reader icon? It's going to be in their lower right-hand corner. Now, we are getting close to the end, and there's a couple of other things I want to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and press on. One question I get a lot is, how do you add videos to the slides that you're creating for students? So I am going to go ahead and let's open up a slide deck. So I've got a slide deck right here, the lesson plan template for Pear Deck. I am opening that up in edit mode. And for those of you that are new to Pear Deck and you're like, I've never even created a Pear Deck, you start out with your slide deck. And this lesson plan template is going to be available to you. So I am going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. Let me grab that template preview link and drop that in the chat. If you want to use this as a guide to creating your first Pear Deck lesson, you can do that. You'll also need to go right up into your extensions and open up your Pear Deck add-on. And you're going to get this side panel. This is your control panel for adding interactivity to your slide deck. So let's say for my background knowledge slide, I want to add a video. Right here in this area, these are my 6 options for interactive elements that I can add into my slide deck. So we've seen the text response, we have seen the drawing. I'm going to add a website. When I click on website, Pear Deck is going to ask me for the URL for that website. So you can paste in a URL like this one, for instance. Whoops. And you're going to see a preview of that website. When you click on Update Slide, that is now going to be embedded in my Pear Deck slide deck. So it's usually pretty easy to embed websites, but videos can be a little tricky. So let's say instead of this document, I want to add a YouTube video. I've already got a YouTube video selected here. So intuitively, you would probably grab this link and paste it in, and you would find that it doesn't work because there is a little bit of a trick to adding YouTube videos. Instead of grabbing the link at the top, you need to go right down below the video to the share button. Click on embed, and don't let this scare you off because you're going to see all this code over here. But all you're looking for is HTTPS. You're going to grab the link that's within the quotation marks and copy it. It's going to have embed in it. Then you go back and you're going to paste that link in, and you're going to see a preview of your video, update your slide, and now you've got a video resource embedded into your presentation. The good thing about that is when you embed a video, the students are not going to have to open a new tab or window. That video is going to be right here within that Pear Deck interface. They can click play.
The stone city of Machu Picchu is.
And if you have some guiding questions on the left-hand side, they can keep those in mind as they're watching. Now, after my students have watched that video, I am going to move them along to the next question. This is a multiple choice response. The students are going to see those answer choices here on the right-hand side, and they're going to be able to select one response as the one they think is correct. And let me just show you what this looks like. I love these multiple choice questions. When you show those responses, it looks like you've given your students a poll. So I can see that looks like we are on the right track. Yes, it is northwest of Cusco, Peru. All right, moving on. Hide those responses right back here. Let's talk about those takeaways. So I mentioned at the very beginning, if you join this Pear Deck presentation, you're going to get a document that contains all of the slides and all of your responses as a notes document that you can refer back to after our session is over. It is a Google Doc, and it is editable by the student and by the teacher. So I love these takeaways to give to my students as a notes document from the lesson. And often the next time I meet with the students, we will open up those documents and add to them or summarize our learning. So going on to the next slide, here is an example of a student takeaway document. So on the right-hand side is our example takeaway. It's going to have the name of the instructor, the date that the lesson occurred. Part 1, there is a space for the students to summarize their learning. And then they're going to be able to see all of the slides from the presentation. Right below each slide is a place for students to take notes. If the student responded to a question, they're going to be able to see their response. They cannot edit this, or they can edit that part, and they can also use the space under to take notes. And on the right-hand side, if the teacher left feedback, the student is going to see that feedback in their takeaway document. So I really love those takeaways. We also have a new feature called Reflect and Review. At the end of the lesson, the teacher can generate Reflect and Review links to provide to the students. It's going to allow the students to go back and review a Pear Deck lesson, but in Reflect and Review, the students are not going to be able to change or modify their responses. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to go ahead and end my session. It's going to ask me to name my session. So I'm going to name it. And then I've got a couple of options here. One of my options is to generate that takeaways document. I can also share this to Google Classroom for my students to easily access it. And then right here, I can copy this link and give it to my students so they can access Reflect and Review. Since I joined this presentation as a student, I can show you what that looks like. If I open a new tab, I can paste in that link. And the Reflect and Review interface is going to look a lot like the original Pear Deck lesson. I'm going to be able to see all of the slides in the slide deck, but I am not going to be able to modify or change anything. So this is a really nice way to let students review their work, but they won't be able to change any work or any of their answers. Now, the takeaways are a little bit different. We can generate those takeaways and publish them. And in just a few minutes, if you joined our presentation, you're going to be getting an email with a link to your personalized takeaway. All right, so as a teacher, you may not have time to review your student responses immediately after ending a lesson. I know I was ending a lesson and starting with another lesson or another group of students, so I might need to come back later and review my student responses. And you can do that back on your Pear Deck homepage. So heading back over to peardeck.com, I can go right here to my sessions at the top, and I can go back into the session that we just concluded. So I can click on the presentation view, the teacher dashboard view, or I can go in here and I can open up Reflect and Review from the teacher perspective. This is going to allow me to look at student responses one by one as I need to review my student answers or my student work. So I love this option to come back into Reflect and Review at any time to see student work. Now, we also have the option here to export student responses to a spreadsheet. This is just going to display those responses in a little bit different format. Keep in mind, if you're using that spreadsheet, not all of the response types are going to translate well to a spreadsheet. If you are using drawing, you're not going to see those drawings on the spreadsheet. It's just going to let you know that those were drawing questions. If it is a multiple choice, a text response, a draggable, you are going to see those answers on your spreadsheet. So just another option for looking at those student responses. All right, a question came up earlier. How can I come back to a session later? So how can I start a session and come back to it later? If we weren't actually finished with this session, maybe we just ran out of time and I'm ending it for today, but I want to pick up where we left off tomorrow, I can come to that sessions list, go to the three-dot menu, and I can reopen that session. It's going to let my students rejoin, pick up right where we left off. All of the work they've done so far is going to be preserved. Some teachers also like to kind of queue up their lessons ahead of time. So going back to this lesson plan template, let's say I have created this lesson. I'm going to use it with my students tomorrow, and I want to get things prepped and ready. I can go ahead and start that lesson. I can choose whether I want this to be a student-paced activity where students work through at their own pace, or instructor pace where I guide the students through that lesson. So I'm going to set this one up as a student-paced activity. It's launching that activity. And now I can close that. And when I'm ready, I can come in here to my sessions list, and I can open that presentation view and let my students join. Now, we also have the option, again, to share with Google Classroom, so you can create it as a Google Classroom assignment. And there is an interaction with GoGuardian teachers. So I know you are also GoGuardian teacher users. And let's see, I've got my GoGuardian teacher account opened up right here. So my math class is in progress. I've got these tabs right here at the top, and you're going to see Pear Deck is one of your tabs. So I can click right here on Pear Deck. You're going to have to connect your your Google account that you are using to create those Pear Decks. I can see the sessions that I have in progress, and I can also go into my Google Drive and select the slide deck that I want to present as a Pear Deck lesson. Now I select the students that I want to present to, so I can choose the entire class, or I can select a subset of my class and choose Present Live. That is going to open up Pear Deck for all of the students that I selected in my GoGuardian teacher classroom. So it makes it really easy to get started with Pear Deck with your class. So you're going to see students joining that classroom. All right. Looks like we've just got about a minute left. I appreciate your time today, and I encourage you to check out the resources that we have available. So this slide has a link to our Pear Deck templates, some ready-to-go lessons that you can grab and customize and use with your students. Again, on your takeaways document, you're going to have this slide with this link, and you can review all of those lessons that are ready to go. All right, I don't see any other questions. Oh, there it is. Can you have some receive the takeaways and the reflect and review for others for differentiation? When you publish the takeaways, they're going to go out to every student that joined your session. The reflect and review is a link. You can provide that link to just the students that need it. So the takeaways go to everybody, but the reflect and review is a link that you provide to the students. So you have control whether you provide that link to everybody or just certain students. And then if they edit the takeaway, do we see the first answer as well as all the edited answers? So the takeaway is a Google Doc. So just like any other Google Doc, you can look at version history to see those previous responses. If a student deleted or changed a response, you're only going to see that new one unless you go to the version history. Now, that is not going to affect reflect and review. So if you look at reflect and review, it's only going to show that original response. All right. I love all these questions. I can tell your wheels are spinning. You're thinking of ways that you might use this with your students. I know this is the end of our time. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to come learn more about Pear Deck. I appreciate your time and your interaction. I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned something you didn't know before and something you're excited about using with your students. So thank you and have a great rest of your day. So just to clarify, reflect and review is a link. You will give that link to your students or push that link out to Google Classroom. Takeaways will arrive in the student email. Takeaways will also show up in the student drive under shared with me.